English Bibles do make it appear that the flood was planet-wide, and of course, a traditional English translation of the Hebrew word kol is once again at the center of the controversy. The Hebrew word kol, Strong's 3605, appears 2 times in Genesis 7:19. Genesis 7:19, all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. The English word all and the English word whole in Genesis 7:19 were both translated from the Hebrew word kol. The English word all in the phrase all the high hills in Genesis 7:19 probably is the perfect translation. That would simply mean that literally all of the mountains in the flood zone were covered by floodwaters, and that definitely seems to have been the case. The Genesis 7:19 phrase under the whole heaven is an entirely separate issue. If the flood was not planet-wide, then the phrase, the Genesis 7:19 phrase, under the whole heaven, would not reference all of planet Earth's skies. It is that simple. And we would once again see that the Hebrew word kol was used in a non-planet-wide context. And that is the case. The flood was not planet-wide. Suppose that we are discussing a severe rainstorm that was in eastern Australia, for instance. Suppose it was Tropical Cyclone Oswald. We could say torrential rainfall soaked the ground under the whole heaven. That statement, which is similar in phraseology to Genesis 7:19, would simply indicate that much of eastern Australia got soaked by rainfall, rain that had fallen from eastern Australian skies. Obviously, that statement would not indicate that the entire planet Earth got soaked by Tropical Cyclone Oswald's rainfall. Context is king. That statement would need to be understood in an Eastern Australian context. Remember that when you meditate on Genesis 7:19. And there is a related issue here. Many years after the flood, Noah's descendants had spread to the land of Shinar. In Genesis 11:1, it is revealed that the whole earth was of one language. In Genesis 11:1, the phrase whole earth was translated from the Hebrew term kol eretz. Both of those words, kol and eretz, can reference non-planet-wide contexts. Put those two Hebrew words together, kol eretz, and they can easily reference a mere local context. And that is what so many Christians have trouble understanding. When a Christian sees the term whole earth in an English Bible, that Christian thinks you are a heretic if you say that that term does not reference the entire planet Earth. It is simply a translation issue. In the case of Genesis 11:1, English Bibles make it appear that only one language existed on planet Earth when Noah's descendants reached the land of Shinar. However, many languages were being spoken across planet Earth at that time. Most of the human race had been outside of the flood zone during the flood. Those humans remained on Earth when the wicked people inside the flood zone drowned in the flood. And the descendants of the people who had been outside of the flood zone were all across planet Earth when Noah's descendants entered the land of Shinar. Genesis 11:1 should be understood in proper context. The Hebrew word eretz in Genesis 11:1 can be translated into the English word land. Suppose that it was. In that case, Genesis 11:1 in an English Bible would say the whole land was of one language. And many Christians would readily understand that Genesis 11:1 simply indicates that only one language was spoken in the area that is effectively referenced in Genesis 11:1. Carefully study the videos in this playlist. The Hebrew word kol should be understood in context. The Hebrew word eretz should be understood in context. Misunderstanding English translations of those Hebrew words in certain Bible verses have led to many long-standing misunderstandings of the Holy Bible, and now is the time to shed light on those misunderstandings. See the description box below.